excerpt that I'm going to read, and it's from my book, The Winter Wedding. I will, real quick, just show you the Winter series. It's one of my favorites. This is The Winter Reunion. That's a copy of the book. I think I posted a picture, right? The Winter Wedding and the final, the Winter Baby. Right? So we go from reunion to wedding to baby. But a lot happens in between those pages. And as you can see, these stories range in size. I'm one of those writers who just writes the story as it is. And sometimes it's longer and sometimes it's shorter. And my readers, they go on the journey with me. So I'm going to read the prologue from The Winter Wedding. Here we are. Okay. Run. Adrenaline laced with fear propelled Tamar through the parking lot. Snow crunched under the weight of her boots. Barely breaking her fall with the side of someone's car, she slid across a sheet of ice. Slow down, girl. She wouldn't have to deal with this problem if she just killed herself. Suddenly, she paused. She had to try again, to remember what her car looked like. It was silly. She'd been driving it for months, and still, the sleek silver Range Rover was foreign to her. It was a gift from Stephen that she wished she'd never accepted. In the end, she kept it because she couldn't explain why she wouldn't accept it. NFL players with $45 million contracts gave their women big gifts. Tamar fished through Tamar fished around in her handbag for her keys. She pushed the alarm for the car and followed the noise 2 rows over and pushed the button to stop the noise. Her cell rang. She removed it from her bag as she slid in behind the steering wheel. Mrs. Pierce, this is vehicle security. Annoyance. I'm fine. I couldn't locate my car. Would you please give us your personal security code? Tamar provided the code and answered the other 2 security questions. Once they were done, she slid her cell into the special slot that was cut into the dashboard for it and started the car. The doors locked around her. The automated voice welcomed her to the vehicle and asked her if she needed GPS. Tamar clutched the steering wheel. You need to run. She closed her eyes and blinked hard against the burning tears. She had to talk to Stephen. She had to tell him before the reporter did. You know better than anyone that you need to get in front of this story. The cocky jerk opened his notebook. A few questions can sway the direction I'll take. In the quiet of the car, she cried, What does he know? Good afternoon, Mrs. Pierce, the automated voice from the dashboard speakers stated. Mrs. Pierce. She was not Mrs. Pierce. She would never be Mrs. Pierce. She thought back to the day he gave it to her. This car is too much, Stephen. I told you I didn't want you spending money on me. I've spoiled myself and my mother. I don't have any kids. Who am I going to spend it on? He asked. You have no idea how much I'm looking forward to spoiling you. Tamar pushed the ignition button. Within seconds, a voice greeted her with the words, Please put on your seatbelt, Mrs. Pierce. Will you be needing GPS assistance? Tamar turned toward Stephen, cocked an eyebrow. You might as well get used to hearing yourself be called Mrs. Pierce. He leaned in and kissed her. You'll be my wife soon enough. Feigning indignation, Tamar snatched her head back. Who said I was going to change my name? Stephen chuckled. You make a compelling argument for not changing it, and I won't utter a word about you keeping Johnson. Tamar pursed her lips. She had only been teasing him. Really? I don't care what other people call you. I just need you to know who you are. I wouldn't dream of keeping my name. Good, Stephen said, because I was kidding. Tamar slapped him playfully. She felt the blood in her veins surge. How had she gotten here? How should she let it get this far? The memory of that playful slap on his arm stung her hand now. She should have never taken this car. She removed her gloves, reached for her phone, swiped the screen, and scrolled through her contacts for Escape Travel Agency. She pressed the phone against her chest and dropped her head back. She couldn't run. She had responsibilities. Besides, running was hard. You were never really going anywhere. You were only trying to get away from your past, and the past ran harder and faster than she'd ever been able to, because her past was in her mind, memories, and heart. There was no escaping that. But as hard as it had been to disappear the first time, disappearing again was preferable to explaining herself. Stephen's face came into view in her mind. It wasn't his good looks that haunted her right now. It was his heart that she saw, a heart she was going to be responsible for breaking. She opened her eyes and sighed. You want to get in front of this? The reporter's words slipped into her mind again. Tamar reached into her pocket for his business card. She read the contact information again. Roy Cray, feature reporter, the City Standard. She was a writer. Some folks would say she herself was a reporter. In any event, she knew how this worked. The clock was ticking. If Roy didn't get a quote from her soon, it would be too late to give him one. Tamar sighed and dialed the number. This is Cray. Uneasiness clutched her stomach as she spoke. This is Tamar Johnson. Silence for a moment, and then, Miss Johnson, I haven't gotten far. Can we meet? I'm not sure I want to meet. I have a story. Solid. Definitive. Sure. When a reporter's tone carried confidence, they weren't blushing. Irritated, she replied, Stephen has told his side of the story 100 times already. We don't have anything else to say. This isn't about Stephen. Tamar closed her eyes. She'd known it, felt it. When he stopped her, she fought to keep a tremble out of her voice. What is it? I'm sure you know. A beat of silence, and then, it's about what happened after the video. Fear crept up her spine. She masked it by keeping the irritated tone in her voice. A lot of things happened after the video. Okay, then let me be more specific. You dropped out of school. I know what you were doing. I'd like a quote or two before we go to press. Tamar swallowed bile. I had to change colleges because of people like you. Miss Johnson, I'm almost done with my research. I need to hear from you in 24 hours. Or, Tamar pressed the button to end the call. Or you'll write it anyway. She finished his sentence. Run. She closed her eyes. Running was cowardly. She wasn't 18 years old this time. She was a grown woman who had to face up to this situation. This truth was coming out. This story had to be told. This wrong had to be righted. Stephen will hate me. Mrs. Pierce, do you need GPS assistance? Even the car wouldn't leave her alone. Tamar banged on the steering wheel and yelled with the same intensity. Home! We are searching for that location, Mrs. Pierce. She checked her mirrors. The tires screamed as she backed out of the parking space. She was not Mrs. Stephen Pierce. And after she had this conversation with Stephen, she was for sure she would never be. Cancel home, she barked at the car. Do you want to go to another location, Mrs. Pierce? She hesitated before saying, the airport. So that's the prologue for the winter wedding. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and hopefully you'll make a decision that you're interested in reading the series.